Welcome back to Empowered and Out, the LGBTQ plus career coaching podcast. I'm Jonathan Barbie, founder and creator of Empowered and Out Coaching, and I'm here to help you thrive as your authentic self at work and beyond. Today we have a guest whose story beautifully weaves together family, education, and authenticity. I'm joined by Sharee Salas, a lesbian mom, teacher, and trainer who embodies what it means to live with purpose in every role she plays. She's a special education teacher by day, a religious school teacher at her temple, and even in her work as a personal trainer, she's teaching, guiding clients of all sizes and experiences, including those with eating disorders, to move with safety and intention. But what really stands out about Sharee's journey is how she's navigated being an out educator after a time when she wasn't able to be. And we'll be diving into how ASL, authenticity, and parenthood all play a role in the way she shows up for her students, her family, and herself. So if you're a longtime listener or tuning in for the first time, I'm so glad you're here. And Sharee, welcome to Empowered and Out, because I'm so glad that you are here.
Well, thank you, John, and I'm excited.
Awesome. So let's talk about your background. You describe yourself as a lesbian mom, teacher, and trainer. Three identities that clearly mean so much to you. Can you tell us a little more about how those roles shape who you are today?
I think just because of when I grew up, being out wasn't such a thing that now in 2025, I feel like it's important for me to be a role model. So I'm an out lesbian, which is not how I started. And so I really feel that just trying to be a good queer role model has become a big thing to me because I know in my youth, I didn't have any. And I didn't know what being queer was until I was in high school.
Hmm.
As a mother, I think that comes into play as an educator because I can connect with parents on a different level. One of the things I loved being able to share yesterday with some of the parents during our open house is the fact that I absolutely understand how hard it is to drop your child off at kindergarten. And I remember how my daughter ran out of the before care room down the hall and tried to follow me out the door. And I had to bring her back. And so that was a tough thing to do. I mean, she had never been dropped off away from me. She had been at the Y with me. And so I can truly empathize with the parents on what they're experiencing. And I think it goes a long way in making connections with them. As a parent, I think it comes less into play with my own child because she identifies as straight. But we definitely have a lot of kids through her childhood who have spent time in my home because it's a safe place to be.
Nice. So do you find that your different roles, lesbian mom, teacher, and trainer, do you find that they overlap in surprising ways, or do you consciously switch hats depending on where you are?
I definitely switch hats. I know it seems odd because you would think that like a parent and a teacher can be so intertwined.
For sure,
And
yeah.
I feel like when I'm around kids in general that aren't my students, I'm not per se looking at them as a teacher. Granted, I always tell my fiance when we're at parties and stuff, of course I'm with kids. They're my comfort zone. I'm good with kids. But it doesn't mean I'm looking at the kids as like my students in that moment. I do think I'm trying to think of the best way to word it because I'll put on my teacher hat occasionally as a parent, but only so that I have knowledge. When
That
you
makes
have
sense.
a child with an IEP, knowledge is power.
Hmm.
And I have used the power of my education to get things needed. But otherwise, when I'm a parent, I'm a parent.
Nice. Okay. So let's talk about teaching with ASL, which I love this, by the way. You've shared that ASL plays a big role in your classroom.
Eh,
What inspired you to bring sign language into your teaching?
I think it came my first year as a head teacher in public school. I did use it in preschool. When I worked for Kitty Academy, we did several trainings on sign language because they wanted us using it with children and babies. And so I would introduce it, but it was 10 words. When I started teaching kindergarten in the autism program, I had kids who were nonverbal but resistant to PECS, which is the picture exchange program. It has Velcro and a little binder, and it has pictures. It could be colors, things they like, and that's how they'll communicate. But I had children who were just resistant, and I'm like, I
Mhm.
need to teach them a way to communicate. And I actually did a little research, remembering that sign language is good for developing language. That's why we teach it to infants. I was looking specifically for studies on sign language, speech improvement, and autism diagnoses. And it was actually, I could only find one article. And the article I found showed promising data from the study. I actually then implemented it and wrote my own research paper about the fact that what I observed myself as a teacher is students who struggled with using PECs were very receptive to sign language. And then COVID hit. And so I remember doing virtual one-on-one sessions with students, and one parent telling me that the sign language I taught their child was allowing them to communicate. And I watched with my own eyes the child sign more please. And in that
Beautiful.
moment,
That's awesome.
I decided that I would continue doing it. I
That's
have
awesome.
learned about 70 signs.
Oh,
I had a student with hearing issues, and while, if the hearing aid stopped working, if the battery died, if there was an issue, one of the best things that we were able to do was actually use ASL to communicate with this child. Because of this, I have actually already taken 2 sign language classes at the Katzenbeck School for the Deaf. I use apps because I really want to learn more words and really get to a point where I could almost be signing and speaking all the time. That's my dream.
that's
Um,
amazing. I really, yeah. I mean, how have your students responded? I
it
mean,
was
you gave an example perfectly. Yeah, I mean,
actually
it has to be so
so
inspiring.
one of the things I've seen is students start to speak more. Last year, I had a student who minimally verbal. As a matter of fact, the only time we heard words coming out of the mouth was to read the name on each sign, because there's a whole slideshow, and to sing. Otherwise, no language. And just that alone showed me that it gives me access to things that I can't see otherwise. I might not have known this student knew how to read if I didn't see it with my own eyes. And it wasn't one of those where, oh, well, they've memorized it because I've moved the slide. Instead, I'm introducing you to a new one, and the child
Mhm.
read it. So I'm like, okay, they're really reading. But in day to day functioning in the classroom, during trials, during groups, no language. So it was only that allowed us to see that they were reading. I've had so many nonverbal students use sign language to communicate with me. And I've genuinely seen students actually say words paired with the sign, so that I'm actually getting more language than we had maybe before we taught the signs.
That's so wonderful. How have those who had never had exposure to ASL, how have they responded?
Every one of them has learned majority of the signs, whether they'd never been exposed or not. And I think it's a confidence builder. Learning and seeing that you're doing it and having your teacher be excited and understanding, it's an exciting thing for kids. And I think people sometimes don't realize how much those tiny steps mean, because I know that in the gen ed world, they're not as celebrated as they are in the special ed world. So for us, every victory is a victory. It's huge.
Yeah, for
And so
sure.
getting a child who's nonverbal to sign help is going to be a huge thing. And the amount of kids I've seen who start verbalizing because I'm teaching, I can't say because, but in conjunction with what I'm doing, leads me to say that the impact the sign has is positive. I can't say it's causation, but I would definitely say there's a correlation. Studies do, again, show positive impacts. My own experience proves it. On the flip side of it, I also love the accessibility ASL gives. I feel that PECS is very stigmatizing. You see somebody walking around with a clipboard or a binder, and I mean, we're talking, it's this big.
Oh,
So
wow.
I would say what, 5 to 6 inches wide. And that's bulky. And the more verbal the child or the more depth that they are at it, the more PECs are in there. How stigmatizing is that? ASL is not as stigmatizing because, yes, the deaf community uses it, but other communities do as well.
Mhm.
I know a friend of mine teaches yoga out in PA, and she was telling me that she did have somebody come in on the spectrum and they were signing. I've heard of it being done with children with cognitive delays. So it's not just the deaf community. I wish more districts would go right to tablets as opposed to PECs, but I mean, I've subbed and worked in 3 different districts. They all start with PECs. I think a device is less stigmatizing also, just because if you walk around with an iPad and you're a kid, people aren't going to sit there and think, "Oh, there's something wrong with them." They're gonna think, "Oh, what a brilliant idea so that the kid doesn't have a tantrum in the store."
Yeah.
So, it's one of those things that, like, even an iPad or a phone with Proloquo is less stigmatizing than PECs. Interestingly enough, I have seen um, like videos of people and testimonies of people who are deaf feeling isolated because people around them don't. So I feel like in more than one way, I'm helping to end some stigmas just by
Yeah, for sure.
educating.
Yeah. I know I had mentioned to you even my niece who, I mean, she's what, 18 months, almost 19 months now, and my sister has taught her certain sign language because it's helping her learn. It's helping them communicate because at this point in her life she isn't speaking complete sentences. So for her to say more or all done, and my sister, I'm like, all right, great. Especially, it's mostly done obviously when it's normally meal time, but there's other times where she's used some other sign language just to communicate, to make sure she understands. And I know that even at the daycare that my niece is at, they use it as well. And you can see it, and the only way I can say it's really cool to see. I would have never thought, because I'm not gonna lie, I didn't even know what more was. And
Yeah.
I'm 51. I didn't know some of these like sign language, some of this like language. I find it really cool. Now I think I even mentioned this to you in our conversation before, is that I've wanted to learn. I just never had the opportunity to stop and educate myself. And that's 100% on me. That's me not making the time to do it, but I still find it just so fascinating that you get to do it at an age where children are learning to begin with, they're growing, and doing it with autistic children and those who are nonverbal, and to see them reacting. I mean, how impactful is that? I mean, what a difference like that can make in their lives. And you're not just, the great thing is you're seeing it in the classroom, and like you said, with during the pandemic, to be able to see an impact through a screen and seeing
Mhm.
them doing it in their home. I mean, that's even more impactful. The parents are going, "Oh my gosh, this is working. They're learning." And
Yeah.
that's huge, especially nowadays. Like, parents, I think, need to see the impact that teachers are doing even more so, because sometimes we don't thank teachers enough. We really don't. I feel very fortunate through my entire childhood. Oh my gosh, I loved my teachers. Oh my goodness, I had so many great teachers. I will admit, though, I think my most impactful ones really were the elementary school teachers, the younger teachers that I had when I was younger. Those teachers, I still remember the majority of them to this day. And it's just because they clearly made an impact on me and how they were teaching.
So I have an impact story. My daughter's a marching band, and I was at the family student picnic last week, and there was a student in marching band with her who I had as a toddler and a preschooler at the Y. And to this day, Like, she walked up at the parent performance, looked at her music teacher from middle school and me and said, "My 2 favorite teachers." That's the type of impact, or having a student come up to me 3 years later and still tilting their head because that's the way we show affection. Like, that was what was comfortable for them, is me rubbing their head. And they did that, I think, all the way up to, like, 3rd grade. They would walk up and put their head to me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm not sure. People definitely don't realize the impact some teachers have. I wish they did, because I think more people would respect the profession if they realize the impact we have.
For sure. Yeah. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, God.
Okay. So, being out as an educator, you mentioned you weren't always out as a teacher. Can you share what shifted for you and what gave you the courage or the timing to step into being outed?
Well, I guess I'll go back and start with the reason. One of the biggest reasons I was not out, my father was an educator. We discussed it. And then when I student taught, he still recommended that he didn't think the climate was welcoming. And he was right. My cooperating teacher made more than one comment negatively about queer people. And so at that point, that was my decision. And even in daycare, I was in the closet, and it actually, because my boss lived in South Brunswick, I lived in South Brunswick, I would run into her when I was with my ex, and she figured it out. And she had to figure out how to tell me that she knew, because I'd been working for the company for so long. She finally just wrote my ex-wife's name on the card when we had our child. So that's how far back it went. I couldn't do that at the Y because my boss knew me from Kitty Academy and knew both me and my wife at the time. And I hadn't planned on coming out to the kids until I had a parent say something to me. And then she went and told her daughter, and the daughter said something, a 3-year-old, at lunch. So when I went back to public school, my experience was, it's negative, it's negative. And in Princeton, nobody was really out. But when I started working at my current district, Ewing, it was my friend who was a custodian at the time who pointed out to me, "Sharee, we have a special ed teacher, openly queer. We have another teacher, openly queer, another teacher, openly queer." And she looks at me and goes, "I'm openly out." She goes, "You're safe here." And so slowly I started to accept friend requests from people on Facebook, because that's how much I was in the closet. And somewhere along the way, I realized I really could be safe and out in my school. And what's really neat is that it is safe. I mean, there's pictures on my bulletin board of me and my partner. There's pictures of our niece and nephew, of my daughter. Granted, they always point to my daughter and go, "Miss Salas." I'm like, "No, that's Miss Salas's baby." But to be able to have that is wonderful, because I never thought I would have that.
Mhm.
I always expected to see what I experienced student teaching. And I didn't student teach all that long ago, maybe 18 years ago. So it seems like a lot, but in the 2000s, people were out more as
Mhm.
opposed to when I was growing up. And so I guess I hadn't realized how much the perception had shifted into the 2020. And now that, I mean, I became so comfortable, I have 2 pride tattoos, and they're visible almost all the time. That was huge because I had never planned on being out. So to be able to be out, it's nice because it shows normalcy. Normalcy to kids who might be queer in school and
Mhm.
questioning it and not understanding. And I was shocked when this happened, but I did have a coworker come to me and say, "I want to think of ideas to make sure we have inclusive practices here at the school. Will you help me brainstorm?" And that surprised me because I'm not used to being so out that
Mhm.
people would come to me for something like that. And I actually feel like that's a big part of some of my roles at my temple. I love the fact that the kids know that I'm a queer teacher and a queer Jew, because, not all religions and not even strict Orthodox Jews would really accept it. So to see a role, somebody who's
Yeah.
active and a role model. I'm going to be youth engagement and doing a lot of things with our teens. And one of the things I am excited about is to be that queer Jewish role model for them and to even bring my fiance on some things so that the kids can see happy, healthy, queer role models.
I love that. So, looking back, what advice would you give to another educator who's wrestling with whether or not to be open about their identity?
I would love to be able to say, go for it, go be out. But I'm going to always add the caveat, check know the temperature of your school, know how they are. If it's a school in certain parts of the country that might have moral clauses,
Hmm.
not sure I'd want to come out there. So I mean, I'm lucky I live in Jersey. I mean, I remember hearing about moral clauses when I first started teaching, and I didn't realize they were such a thing, but they are apparently still in contracts. Somebody posted about it in a teacher group I'm in the last year or two. So they still exist. And so I would love to be able to confidently tell anybody, if you're wrestling with it, come out, but I'm not naive enough to believe that that's everybody's reality. And so I will say, make sure the climate of your school. I'm not saying that if nobody's out, don't come out, but
Hmm.
you can hear stories people tell. If the stories are negative about queer folk, it's safer to stay in the closet. I'm sorry. If there's just nobody out, but there's no negative tones, embrace it because you could be a leader.
Yeah, for
Which
sure. Yeah, yeah.
I always am amazed when I am told that people look at me as a leader because I don't see myself in that way. I just see myself as another worker bee. But obviously, if people come to me asking ideas about being more queer inclusive, obviously, somewhere along the line, I've become somewhat of a leader in the aspect of knowing that I'm out, to be safe for other people and know that maybe somebody else could be going through the same struggle as I did. It is hard. It's not an easy decision to wrestle with. But yeah, I think if the climate is welcoming, be that leader.
You make a really good point. Yeah, you have to make sure that what the school is like, what the atmosphere is like, because you can't, especially, I mean, I would say there's definitely other industries that are like this, but you have to be careful. And
Yeah.
it's your safety at the end of the day. And truthfully, it's your job. So if you want to be able to be doing it for a long period of time, it'd be awful that
Mhm.
you might lose your job or have to, excuse me, change schools very quickly because of possibly coming out, being out at whatever it might be. And yes, you're 100% correct. I mean, every state is different, every school district is different. You really have to be very careful. And especially I would say, I don't know. I don't know if I don't know how much it depends on the age of the children as well. I feel that that can also play a factor in it as well. Like if you're wanting to be it in the younger ages like you are, or even possibly older, I think older might be almost even scarier because parents might see you in a completely different light if you all of a sudden were an out gay male and you're teaching, I don't know. I can't even think of what you might, I don't know. The parents might think it in a completely different ways.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I think it kind of falls in every type of job you might have or every industry. You just have to see what's comfortable. If you're right, though, if it's a comfortable space and you can see, cool, I might be able to do this. You're right. Being that leader is going to help you, number one, stand out, but stand out in a good way. And you're going to be leading the group of people that now, oh, hey, so and so over here, this teacher, they weren't so sure about it. And they were very, were closeted. And now they're like, okay, cool, I can do this. I can I can share my experiences.
Yeah.
And even at being able to have a conversation with even another educator is going to be even better because you can share the experiences, good or bad, however they might have been or might be. So,
I won't lie, it was kind of nice at the Y where, everybody knew me, my wife at the time, my daughter, and it was a very safe place to be. It was a very welcoming space in every way. Nobody looked any way at my child with her 2 moms. She was never segregated, not included. It was always just that's what it was, and she was a part of a lot of stuff. And so when it came time to leave that, that was hard because that's a level of comfort that as a queer person, you don't get. Straight people take that for granted.
For sure. Yeah. So let's talk about, as both a parent and a teacher, you've had some unique experiences. You had hinted with me in our conversation that a story about not letting your kid know what you thought of her teacher. Can you share that with us and how that went?
So my child's neurodivergent. She has ADHD. In elementary school, she had a behavior intervention plan, a BIP, and part of it was a daily report that came home about her behavior. And I think at that point, I had just told my daughter that I was dating somebody. Me and my ex-wife were divorced, and my daughter had been used to having me to herself, and so she was struggling a little, and I just reached out to the teacher to let her know about this and that she was upset and struggling. And the teacher emailed me back and was like, "Well, she hasn't been listening since such and such date, and I would like to have a meeting." And me and my girlfriend at the time went through every data sheet that I got for her behavior, and not a single one hinted at her being non-compliant for the day at all. None. And so I was reinforcing her behavior at home based on that very sheet because I do firmly believe in that work home connection. So she would actually get rewarded at home based on that data sheet. And we had a meeting, and I didn't even get to say it. My girlfriend at the time threw this stack of 40, not even, we had like 40 behaviors, threw it on the table and said, "Show me where it says she's non-compliant." And her teacher looked at us and goes, "Well, I don't read everything that goes out of my room." And I looked at her and I said, "How can you not know what's being written on this data form?" I said, "I have 3 kids on behavior charts. I'm aware of what's on that chart. Nothing leaves my classroom about a behavior without me knowing about it." So now this is all the way in like February. So I have to make sure my child doesn't know that I think her teacher is as useless as tits on a bull because I want my child to behave in school. How do you hide that you think the teacher is incompetent when you're trying to get your child to respect them and listen to them? You have to hide it. She had no idea. I don't know if to this day if she even knows.
Well, that's good. You did a good job.
Granted, at one point, like, she did have a shared para, and I had no problem telling my child, "You lean on her too much." I'm grateful that she's not here when we moved because I wanted my child to do her work and not rely on somebody. So it was a tough thing, but and that isn't the only issue we had. I mean, in middle school, they tried to tell me and my ex-wife that our child didn't need an IEP, and I looked right at them and I said, "Well, here's her classification. Here's her impact on education. What do you mean she doesn't qualify? You've never seen somebody close their mouth as quickly and say, 'Okay, this is what we're going to do.'" Now, granted, after that, I love the case manager because he knew I knew the laws. And so if I wanted it, I usually got it. And I'm not unreasonable.
Yeah.
It was things like test anxiety. I'm like, "Listen, her classwork shows that she knows the stuff. If her classwork shows she knows the stuff and she gets lower than a C on a test, I would like her to retake it because that means her test anxiety got in the way." And it was her 5th grade teacher who saw her test anxiety and actually said to me, "Ignore her test scores because she knows the material."
Nice.
So, even I actually just had Chloe's IEP meeting in June, and I looked at, was this year? I think it was this year. I looked at her case manager, and I say this every year. And so I couldn't believe that she asked it this year. Chloe would thrive in a UDL environment, Universal Design for Learning. What that means is it's not all standardized tests. Learning is accessible for every type of learner, your kinesthetic, your musical. Kids who are really musical might write a rap or a song about a subject instead of a paper. My child actually prefers to make slideshows so she can put the info, but doesn't have to worry about all the filler of an essay. I actually like that too. I'm that way. Let me put bullet points. Don't ask me to write.
Yeah.
UDL means it's accessible to everybody. So if you are not a test taker, you could pick a different assessment. And her case manager looked at me and goes, "What's UDL?" And it was actually the science teacher who answered and said, "Universal Design for Learning." It actually spoke volumes to me. My child has loved every teacher she's had. She's been very happy with her classes, her grades, but I'm very disappointed that our school has no idea what UDL is. And it's like I'm
Wow.
sitting there and I have to trust this woman to coordinate my child's services, and she doesn't even know what UDL is. That was a hard one. Because if nothing else, I'm sorry, somebody on a child study team should know these things. It's a
Yeah, they should,
model of education that's most beneficial to special education students.
for sure. Yeah. Wow.
There's a lot of times that parent and teacher mix to get the best for my child.
I think, I mean, you do have a little bit of the advantage knowing that the teacher aspect, you know some of the knowledge that, so that I'm sure that definitely helps you as a parent, because even though it's, I'm sure, as you've said, just, some of the stories you just shared, that it's a little eye opening if they don't know when they really should know. And it's like, well, what happened? Why don't you know this? You should know this. Yikes. Yeah. So let's change gears a little bit. I mean, still talking about teaching, but we're going to talk about teaching at Temple. So we touched on this a little bit. You touched on it a little bit at the beginning. So obviously you also teach at your Temple's religious school. How has that experience shaped your connection to community, especially as a queer person of faith?
I love it. I love it because one of the things I love to do is build community among my students. I felt very isolated as a child. I grew up in a community where I don't know if there were any other Jews when I was in elementary school. And when I was in high school, if they were, they didn't keep Shabbos, they didn't keep kosher, they
Ooh.
never changed over their house for Passover. So I remember feeling very isolated. So one of the biggest things I always talk about with my students is the fact that this is their Jewish community and they're never alone because every person in that class is their community. It is that important to me that they understand that, because it wasn't until I was 40 that I found my Jewish community. I grew up for 40 years without that. And that's very hard. Like, Judaism is not meant to be done in solitude. It's a very communal, community driven religion. And so not having that community was very isolating my whole life. And so when I was asked to do this, at first I was nervous because I didn't grow up going to temple. I don't know the prayers off the back of my hand. But on the flip side, I know the religion and I love it. And I'm a teacher. And so I always love teaching.
Yeah.
I think it's neat. The relationships I develop with the students is one, I am somebody, they get excited when they see me in temple because I am a part of their community. And that's something that not every teacher is a part of our community. So to see that, and I can't wait this year, the first kids I had are going to be bar and bat mitzvah, and to watch that and for them to see that I'm there for them, I'm really excited about. So I think for me, the biggest part of that is really showing these students, this is their community. Most of them have seen Vicky with me at services. If they are in the Purim spiel, they've seen Vicky with me. Everybody knows the night the night I got engaged, I went to temple, and actually Jane was like, "You better say that." When they're like, "What are you thankful for?" So everybody, it's a space I get to be out in and get to be me in. And knowing that we have so many youth that are queer, I love that I get to be that role model and
That's so
showing
great.
them you can be queer and Jewish.
Yeah, for sure. So do you find the conversations at Temple, like the Temple school, mirror your classroom, or are they completely different worlds?
Oh, they're so different. It's actually kind of fun because I've never I've never taught older kids. I was a preschool teacher for gen ed for almost 20 years, and then I've been a sped teacher in autism. So this is fun for me. The conversations I get to have, I've never gotten to have as a teacher. And so asking them their opinions and asking them to interpret things, it's exciting to see the way their minds work. And it's amazing how many fifth graders are deep thinkers. I mean,
Nice.
my kid was always kind of deeper, but she's been in therapy forever and I'm a teacher. So like, I feel like you can't judge, like I can't judge by my child a standard
Hmm.
because I'm a teacher. And I feel
Yeah,
like teachers' kids are always just a little more in touch.
I like that. So
So
um, let's let's talk about your personal training work. Well, outside the classroom, you also are a personal trainer who specializes in working with clients of all sizes and with eating
yes,
disorders.
yes.
What drew you to that kind of work?
So it actually came about when I first got divorced and I was working for a nonprofit. And so if you know anything about nonprofit work, it's very feel good work. I loved working at the Y. It's very feel good work, but it doesn't pay a lot. Being a single mother, I actually thought about going back to waiting on tables. And I was working out, taking courses, and my friend was talking to me about it. And she's like, you should get trained, certified as a personal trainer, the idea of it being more bang for your buck.
Hmm.
Personal trainers, depending on your specializations, I had a master trainer who made like 150 every session. Like he told us he charged an exorbitant amount per session. When I started personal training at the Y, a session was $50. So like for this guy to tell me he's a master trainer and his clients pay like 125, 150, it's like holy crap. With that, I did also do a group cert. So I was doing both at the Y while I was in grad school, and I love connecting with people. One of the things that I've loved being able to do is watching people like who couldn't come in and do something and watching their face as they realize they can. Somewhere along the way, left the Y and I focused only on personal training. But one of the things that's also happened is my eyes have been opened to the anti-fat feeling in our country and how pervasive it is.
Hmm.
And one of the things is I've worked with people of all sizes, but also as a group fitness instructor, I always encouraged people and I said to them, whatever your size is, we'll find a modification that works. So one of the things, the eating disorder actually comes from my therapist has suggested it to me because I myself have an eating disorder and overexercising was a problem, but I've learned to have a healthy relationship with exercise. And I have been known to tell people who overexercise, you're actually not doing what you want for your body. Your body will not respond the way you want because you're overworking it. And I've really been pushing a lot of that knowledge out. I think for me, when I talk about exercise, the biggest thing is form, and you can have good form no matter what size you are. And it's usually those who are the gym rats who have the worst form because
Yeah, I
they've
can.
never worked with a trainer. When I used to, there's a track at the Y here. I didn't work at my local Y. Well, actually, I did. That's a lie, but that's not where I worked for so long. The Y by me has a track. And I remember running on that track and seeing a person doing something with horrible form. And I looked at him, I go, if you are trying to do X, Y, and Z, you're not getting that because you look like this. And you can't do a side plank with your hips bent. You're not getting the results you want. I have been known at the Y to walk up to people and tell them, you're dropping the weight that heavy, you don't have control over it. If you have to drop it like that, you don't control it, that means it's too heavy. I've been known to walk up and correct people's form. People don't always like it, but I'm a professional and doing things the wrong way can hurt. And I think that's the problem is a lot of people look at people in different bodies and think they're going to get hurt instead of realizing it they can do it safely.
Well, yeah, if you're taught the right way to do it, you're probably less chance to get hurt compared to if you're not doing it correctly. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, that makes sense to me. I mean,
Yeah.
there's reasons that even back when I was a swimmer, we did weights and we were in the gym, we did stuff, and our coach taught us the correct ways to use the machines and to do weights and do it correctly so that it didn't hurt us. And then even swimming certain strokes, we
Hmm.
learned techniques of everything. That I mean, well, that's one of the things I loved about my coach is he taught us the technique, he taught us the drills, he taught us everything that when if you learned all the basics, the stroke just came naturally because you were learning all these like the ins and outs of how it worked. And then once you got to do it, put it all together, boom, success.
Yes. A lot of people push. When I was doing group fitness, I remember these big buff guys walking into my class. Now, I taught body pump. Now, I don't know if you've ever heard of it. Full body barbell workout, 100 reps per body part. So you're talking intense. And these big guys come in and they're loading up their weight and they're trying to put what I have on my bar. The difference is I've been doing this for years. My body's built up. I have strength endurance. Most
Hmm.
guys in the gym in the weight room are usually doing powerlifting, no more than 10 reps at a higher weight. That's not what body pump is. So they're putting on their 10 rep weight and dying. They can't finish the class. And at one point, these guys were telling people, you have to go in there. She's tiny as anything and lifts the biggest weight. And it was hilarious because I'm 5'1". I'm itty bitty. And to see somebody so little with 10 kilos and 10 kilos, it gets to be intimidating. And over the years, it's been so much. And I spent a lot of time reminding people it's not about the weight you're using. You could use an empty barbell and you will still have a workout. And sadly, I actually just went on a rant on Facebook. I feel that too many trainers out there say they're trainers and they might not have the certifications behind them. I've watched people role model exercises done wrong. They were doing a front raise. Well, if you're doing a front raise, you're not supposed to go above your shoulder, and she was all the way up here. So if somebody copies that, they're going to injure themselves.
Yeah.
But I know that not all certification programs also teach you all that. So I've seen people with certifications in body pump or Zumba, and they don't know any of the movement science. Every certification I've done through NASM and AFA go over the movement science. In NASM, when I took my CPT test, they actually ask you about specific energy sources for exercise and muscles and muscle movement to work out the muscle group. And so it's so important to have trainers who are educated. I've seen trainers who are not. And it actually bothers me because people come to you for advice on something that could be dangerous. There are exercises that are high risk and high benefit that people do without any thought, like upright rows are a high risk exercise, very effective, but also very dangerous, and because they can so easily be done wrong. And so one of the things I like to promote is the fact that form and everything can be modified, everything can be done. I mean, the reality is I'm fairly broken. I mean, up until 5 years ago, I had carpal tunnel in both hands. I have herniated discs. I have a messed up shoulder, messed up knee, and I still can lift weights and move and do kickboxing. Like, I used to tell people, I'm broken and I can do it. So you can do it.
Yes, you can.
I mean, I'm broken and I've done obstacle course races.
And those kick your butt, or they can. I mean,
Yeah.
I've done a handful of them. Woo! I learned after the first one where I thought I was prepared, and oh my goodness, I was not. But boy, did I help! I helped myself, and I trained correctly, and I learned how to do that. So next times I did it, I was much better prepared, and it actually didn't seem as hard because I prepared correctly. And where the
Yeah.
first time I was like, oh yeah, sure, I can do this, no problem. And yeah, I no,
It was
yeah.
actually because of obstacle course racing that I had started running until they told me that I can't run anymore because my herniations are so bad that yeah. So, like, I spent a couple of years working on running because that was my weakness. I had no problem with weightlifting, no problem with climbing. It was the running from obstacle to obstacle that killed me. So I'm
Oh,
like,
see, and
"Okay,
I
I'm
was
gonna
the
work on
opposite.
running."
I was the opposite because I was in a running group, so I knew how to do the running. That wasn't a problem. It was the climbing. It was all the other craziness that you do in those obstacle courses. Oh my gosh. I'm glad I did it. I really am. I'm glad I put myself through it, even though I probably said some very choice words through probably a lot of those races while I was doing it. But I'm so thankful that I challenged myself to do it because I feel like if I didn't challenge myself, where would I be? Like just like when I challenged myself to run a half marathon.
Yeah.
Had I not, I mean, I trained what I loved about that, and you probably just with doing personal training, I never had to run a half marathon in my training. I just had to know how to do it and how to prepare myself because I was running 5Ks left and right all the time. It was
Yeah.
just a matter of getting up to that point. And I think the best part of even the half marathon that I ran was the first half was almost all uphill. And then you kind of did a U turn, and the rest of the end of it was all going back downhill. So when I ended, I was like, it was so much easier ending than it was going like starting. I've never been so happy to end a race though. I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so done with this." But I never stopped. I never stopped because I didn't have to because I had trained correctly.
Yeah. It is, I mean, like, I do know that and things like that, like obstacle course racing takes, like, a specific skill set,
Oh, for
and
sure.
a lot of that like, if I was training somebody for that, I wouldn't stay in a gym, I would go outside because that's going to be more effective than anything you can do inside the gym.
Oh yeah.
Um,
100%. Yeah.
I I was the group instructor who would go around and correct everybody's form. So I would stop and yell choreography out to them and walk around and spot check everybody. That's how important form was to me.
It's huge. I mean, that's why, like, I mean, even with swimming, like the form was what was key. That's how you survive. That's how I survive swimming butterfly, people. It's not the easiest stroke to swim.
No, it's
And
not.
so I had the form down. And it was and I always loved years later when I was teaching kids how to swim. They're like, how do you do that? I was like, you just learn the form. But here's the deal. Unfortunately, some people either get it or they don't. And that's
Yeah.
just how the stroke is. It's a very tough stroke. And you either, not everyone's going to be a Michael Phelps. Not everyone's going to be able to swim like that. That's just how it is. Don't feel bad. I wasn't great in every stroke. I struggled. Oh, did I struggle? But I learned, I trained, I learned the form. And I still to this day am kind of in awe that I was able to do it for as long as I was.
I won't lie, when I swim, I do breaststroke. I can't well,
Oh,
I had a doctor tell me I'm not allowed to do butterfly because of my back, because of where my herniations are, although one of them's completely but breaststroke, and it was funny because my old big boss looked at me one day and was watching me swim. He goes, "You're very graceful, but where's the speed?" I'm like, "It's breaststroke. There's not a lot of speed."
I had the grace. I had no speed in breaststroke. When I was a teenager, I had early teenagers, like 10, 11, 12-year olds that were beating me when I was like 15, 16. That is how awful I was. So I looked great. I just
But
couldn't. My speed was awful. And the good or the bad is that I tended most of the time in any race, I was not doing something that had breast, like I would never do an individual medley
yeah,
because of that. Now, if I did, I had to work my tail off on the other three strokes to make sure that
you
I
could
didn't
compensate.
get, yeah, I could completely compensated and I didn't end last. I'll just say that. But
Uh,
yeah.
when When I still had my Y membership, my goal was to get to a 40-second length. I think I was averaging about 45 to 47 seconds. So I didn't feel that bad. Like I mean,
Yeah.
I could swim 17 laps in a half hour, which isn't, I don't think that's bad. But
No,
again, I
that's
mean,
not bad.
and it was so like my lungs loved it. When I swam, my asthma was phenomenal.
Oh, I
Now I no
bet.
longer
Yeah.
have a gym membership, so I don't go swimming like that. And my lungs are like, yeah, remember you're asthmatic. It's amazing. I mean, legitimately to have like your body respond. One of the things that I love about exercise is what it can do for your body. I mean, at one point I had a chiropractor swear I was gonna have surgery because my back was so bad, and was working in the it was summertime, so the only work I had was my fitness work at that point. I was in grad school. And it was actually the weightlifting that got me to the point that I could move again.
Phew.
And when I went to the doctor and he sent me to physical therapy, like I had to go to a specialist, he's like, "You have so much mobility." And he's like, "Oh, no weight bearing exercises." And I walked out of the room and said, "Yeah, right. Obviously, the weight bearing exercises are what gave me mobility." So, like, it's one of those things that, like, it does help our bodies. Like, I feel good when I work out.
Oh,
My
yeah.
body
I
feels
mean,
good.
yeah, I mean, for me, when I was working out, even when I was running, when I was swimming, even moving here to to a higher altitude, which by the way, that took a second to get used to, especially with running. Whew, swimming not a big deal. It was the running because at least swimming, you're just going back and forth. Like with running, I might have an incline. I might go up. I might go
Yeah.
down. Even though weirdly enough, my very fastest K to date was in a higher altitude. So I've never been able to run that fast. And it was a flat, like it was a, yeah, I don't get it. It's everybody goes, wait, how did you, because even when I got back from coming into I was in Utah. And when I came back down to Kansas City, where I was at the time, I did like a 5K, I think a week or two later. And no, I was like 3 seconds slower.
You know, you say that, and it's kind of funny because my fastest run time ever was at my mom and dad's house in Florida. Now, mind you, I don't like Florida. The humidity is horrible for my asthma. But that was the first time I did a 23-minute 2 miles. And
Wow.
I never did it again, ever. But in Florida, I could do it.
So funny how our bodies work. So let's talk about visibility and impact as we kind of close out our questions today. Excuse me, goodness, stuff in my throat. When you think about being a lesbian mom, teacher, and trainer, what do you hope your students, your clients, or even your own child take away from the life you live? From the wow, I can't speak. From the way you live your life.
That queer people can have normal lives. Like, I really feel like, but not just queer. I feel like it's, I feel like in so many ways, I I go to eating disorder groups, and one of the things I love to do is show that whole idea of there is life after an ED. And I feel like I spend so much of my time trying to show that queer families are no different. We have every right to exist, and we can raise happy, healthy children.
Yeah, no matter what's being said.
Yes. It was one of those things that's been really big to me is the fact that like my goal as a parent was to raise a kind human being. And I look at my child and I can genuinely say me and my ex-wife have raised a kind human being to put out into that world. And that's what we need. I think that's the biggest thing is when we lead with visibility, not hiding who we are, we can show everything that we can do.
So true.
Eh,
So true. I love that. So we're
Well, and I feel like that can apply to everything in life, like not just being queer.
yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, it really can 100%. I think that, yeah, when you're living the life that you want to live and you don't have to mask it in any way. And like you said, this goes for everyone across the board, not just, someone who's in the queer community, because everyone masks. Everyone in some way, at some point, everyone masks. They may not mean to, or they do mean to, but just because they're not comfortable or they're afraid. Or as my friend Garrett, who I interviewed recently, we have that self doubt. So when we get rid of that self doubt and we can truly be authentic ourselves, we're living the life we don't live, we're just in a better place. Just emotionally, physically, mental health is going to probably be better because everything's feeling good from our head to our feet. Everything is good because you can take a big deep breath and just like, all right, things are good. Things are good. So, yeah. So let's talk about, well, I don't know what we're going to talk about random stuff because these are rapid fire questions. So these
Yes.
are questions that I love to ask my guests because my challenge to you, Sharee, not everyone has succeeded in this, but my challenge to you is to answer to whatever comes to your brain first. The
All
reason
right.
I asked, I mean, I love my guests. I've had some amazing guests, but what I love is when I'm asking the rapid fire questions and then someone thinks and thinks and thinks. And it's like, I believe this was a rapid fire question, not like a deep dive question. So, and I've had a lot of dead air and I love doing the funny thing. I'm weird. I love the post production of my podcast. I'm not going to lie. It's fun, especially because I might miss something that like you or previous guests have said. I'm like, I didn't catch that because I'm thinking of so many different things while I'm, in the middle of a conversation. I'd love to be always present. It's not going to always happen. There's too many things happening. But what is one word that your students would use to describe you?
Mama. I'm the school mama.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that. I think we all have someone that we probably kind of put in that position that that's how we describe them. We even jokingly, I'm in a choir and we have someone, interestingly enough, she is an administrator. She works at a school and she kind of jokingly calls herself like our choir mom. And it's like, yeah, you pretty much are. Even though I think we're close to the same age. It's just that she's just kind of just taken on kind of that motherly
Mom
role.
role.
Yep, the mom roles. All right. Coffee, tea, or something stronger to get you through a long teaching day?
Water.
Hey, water is water. There's nothing wrong with that.
I
I
mean,
love it. Oh, I mean, I do it. I mean, I love water. Honestly, I do. I do have to have my coffee first thing in the morning. Outside of that, even though our dear friend Jane is trying to get me off of like drinking so much caffeine, and I get it. I get it. I get it. It ain't happening yet, Jane. I'm sorry. Just got too
I
much going on. I'm trying really
drink.
hard.
I actually don't drink coffee at all. I'll drink tea, but I don't drink coffee.
See, I think I could switch over to tea, but I don't think I could totally give up. Personally, at this point, I really am. I really have knocked down as much caffeine that I used to take in, drink about, oh my gosh, maybe a fourth of what I used to. Like I mean, it's really amazing how I used to drink that much. I'm kind of in awe how much I used to drink. It's kind of disturbing actually. But so here's another fun question. And what's a book, podcast, or resource that's been inspiring you lately?
There's two. I would say the most current is this Health at Every Size book has been really um that, or like the 19 myths about, like, you just need to lose weight, 19 myths. That was very inspiring. An older one that I wish I knew where the book was, is it was very inspiring to me, was I Would Be the Girl Next Door Except For, and it's the book A Memoir of a Jewish Lesbian.
Interesting. That would
So
probably, I
that's like,
mean,
it's an older book, but it has inspired me just always. Like, I've read that in college, but it has always stayed with me. But, like, the
that's
one
great.
that most recent, I feel like, is recommended by actually my daughter's nutritionist. No, you just need to lose weight and 19 myths about fat
All
people.
right. I like that. So before we finish, if there's
Yes.
one truth or piece of advice of guidance you'd want our listeners to remember about living authentically, what would it be?
The pieces fall into place when you live authentically. I feel like the last 6 years have been the most authentic. Actually, I'm going on 7. The last 7 years have been the most authentic of my life. And the things that have happened in it, the dreams that have come true, I think all fall in line because I'm being me.
I love that. That's awesome. So thank you so much for joining me today.
It's
Your
fun.
story, yeah, it was fun. Your story highlights how authenticity shows up in so many dimensions of life, from the classroom to parenting to fitness coaching. And what stands out most is a reminder that teaching isn't just about content, it's about modeling how to live with honesty, care, and courage. So, listeners, for those listening in, if you want, you know, this has been an amazing conversation. Remember that Sharee, she's a personal trainer. She obviously specializes in clients of all sizes and supports those navigating eating disorders. So definitely, if you want to check her out, please do. And always thank you for tuning in to Empowered and Out. So if today's conversation inspired you, take a moment to share this episode with a friend or leave a review. Find us on socials at JMB Coaching LLC on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Find me on LinkedIn at Jonathan Barbie and let me know. Let me know what inspired you. Until next time, stay empowered, stay out, and keep teaching, parenting, and living in ways that make every space more authentic and inclusive.